And one. Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Global Citizens. My name is Calvin. I am the show's host, and I'm also this show's creator. So, my guest for today is probably one of the youngest I have on my show, but she has done so many cool stuff, and it's really amazing. Please welcome Miss Winnie Koo. Winnie is currently studying in Pennsylvania. She is a third culture kid who is now the International Programming Graduate Assistant for the university. And more impressively, she is also the creator of a webtoon series called Third Culture Chinese, which you can find on Instagram. I've actually attached it on the description box. Do check it out after the show, yeah? So Third Culture Chinese is actually a fictionalized version of herself, whereby she tells her life in every single day as a TCK, some of the cultural differences. It has amassed over 30,000 followers on Instagram, which I think it was created around January, if I'm not mistaken. But
January last
so, oh, okay. So it's over a year already. All right.
year.
That's still really impressive, though. Okay, so without further ado, I will let Winnie take the stage. So, hi, Winnie. Welcome to the show. How are you feeling?
Good, good. Thank you so much, Calvin, for inviting me.
You're most welcome. All right. So, my very first question, I'm so sorry you will have to hate me for this. Okay. There's a term on this show called the TC quest. So basically, it asks you to tell about your journey as a TCK, where you're from, where you've been living. And to follow up with that, what is home? Your definition of home relates more to the family, to your family, or the physical location itself?
Good question. So I am mostly from China. I was born and raised in China. When I was very young, like about 2 or 3, I lived in Japan in Nagoya very briefly because of my dad's job. But then I moved back to China. I moved to the United States, to New Jersey when I was 14. That was because of my mom's job relocation. I lived in Jersey for a year and a half, and then I moved to Singapore. I lived in Singapore for 2 years, finished high school there, and came back to the States to Pennsylvania for college. And I've been living in Pennsylvania since 2015. I would say home is definitely where the people are, where like my loved ones are. Right now I'm a little like torn because my family is in China. Right after I got in college, my parents are like, "We're done moving around. You're in college. You're settled. Let's go back." So my parents moved back to Shanghai. That's where I'm originally from. So in that sense, my family is still in China. So I'm supposed to call China home. But at the same time, I've been living in the States overall for like seven years ish now, and I think I understand the culture here. I Most of my friends are from here, so in that sense, I guess the U.S. is also my home. Usually, when people ask where I'm from, like in the States, I would say I'm from China because my family is still there. But if I travel around, I would say I'm from the United States because that's where I currently live.
Okay. That is the dreadful question, isn't it? Where are you from?
Definitely.
I in fact remember one of your recent new creation whereby people were you have a friend of yours, or I don't know if it's real or not, whereby somebody asked you your home is not a good doing on a good job in controlling the pandemics, and you were thinking is which country's flag. One of them is Singapore, USA, and then China. So I was really laughing at that.
Yeah. It's like it wasn't really based on the real like interaction with like in-person interaction, but there were definitely people commenting online saying like your country's not doing a great job with the like in this pandemic. I'm like, which one? But honestly, none of them did a good job. So there.
Yeah, that's kind of true. Even in my home now, we're not really exactly doing a good job. So, all right, all right. So we'll get to that a little later. All right, Winnie. So, what actually has formed your anchor? So, a lot of TCKs would experience a lot of mental issue. Like for what you are actually experiencing now, it's like, for example, you're torn between where your homes are, right? So, what actually has been your anchor so far? Like, what keeps you from going insane, from having an existential issue?
Mm, I think I have come to terms with just the confusion, because I realized that even if you're not a TCK, you are going to have a lot of identity crisis anyway. It's like a lot of people in our generation, they're gonna move somewhere like within the country or abroad in their lifetime, and they are going to, like, everybody's going to experience some culture shock, like whether you're a TCK or not. I just like there's gonna be a lot of confusion in terms of identity, in terms of your cultural background and socioeconomic background. I just think after knowing a lot of people from different cultural background, different personalities, different socioeconomic backgrounds, I just like it became clear to me that I am not the only one in confusion, and I just like now I know how to live with that kind of confusion.
All right. Okay, so now we actually will dive into what is actually why I actually was so interested to bring you to the show. Okay,
Okay.
so what actually started Third Culture Chinese, and what do you hope to accomplish in the long run from it?
Hmm. So how it started is kind of like two things that became one. So I have always been really interested in art, and ever since middle school, I've been doodling, and I've always wanted to tell my story in terms of like little doodles, comics, but I never really thought that it would become like anything big. But then in during my undergrad at Lehigh, I did a double major in art and architecture, and for my art major, at the end you're supposed to do a capstone. So like I was supposed to propose my project, like any kind of project, just come up with anything and produce something at the end. So I thought about the dream that I've always had, like creating comics, and I brought it up to my advisor, be like, hey, I'm interested in creating comics, and since I am a third culture kid, I feel like there's not a lot of representation on social media about third culture kids in general. I would like to use this as an opportunity to, like accomplish this dream that I used to have, and also give the community a little representation, a little voice. And she was like, go for it. So every week, I created that comic like at the beginning of spring semester in 2019. That was the last semester during my undergrad, and every week I met with my advisor. I showed her some comic chapters. She really loved it. She shared it with a lot of students and faculty members on campus, and it grew from there. And in the long run, I would say my dream is to publish books about third culture kids, and for me, like a third culture Chinese kid. Um, but I'm actually like, a lot of people ask me whether I saw this as a full-time career in the future. I actually don't see that, because like I just, to be honest, I have terrible self-control, and I don't think I can be my own boss. I need to like have an actual job and have a routine, at least at this moment of life. So hopefully in the future it'll become something big, but like it probably won't be a full-time thing.
Yeah, yeah. Not to worry, not to worry. I mean, you're young. Just to let you guys know, Winnie is 23, right? If I'm not mistaken, earlier.
23, yeah.
Oh crap. Okay, yeah, I'm old now. Okay,
No,
never
come
mind.
on.
Yeah, okay. So Winnie is only 23 now, so she has a long way to go. And yet she already does something so incredible, and her mindset to create third culture Chinese is really impressive. And in fact, I actually scroll through every single one of the comic strip. I think every single one of them make me laugh or like, ah, crap, yeah, I
Oh,
experience
thank
all of
you.
this. So yeah, that's actually something that I think should be encouraged. Okay, so earlier you mentioned if that, well, you hope to make it into a book eventually, and well, even though right now you might not think about it, maybe it can be a possible career opportunity. Yeah. So
Mhm.
if you had a chance to contribute to a potential Oscar-winning on animation, what would you create? Certain characters that you create. The reason why I ask this is because a lot of the upcoming questions will tackle on a lot of representation, especially in terms of being a Chinese.
Hmm. Hold up, like your question is if I could create a character? Could you repeat that
Yep.
question?
Yeah, sorry. Okay. So let's say now you are part of maybe Pixar, or I think Pixar is the biggest one at the moment, or DreamWorks.
Okay.
Yeah, you can create a character. Maybe you can create a certain character. What would the character be?
Mm. I think the character would be something along the lines of like my original character from the comic, a third
Yep.
culture Asian kid who has grown up in different countries. I would like if I were to create a character, I want the character to actually like because like I left China when I was 14. I would let my character maybe live abroad when she's younger. He or she doesn't matter the gender when they are younger. Because like I left when I was 14, I already had a pretty solid like understanding. Pretty like I had my root kind of a little bit already in China. I'm not exactly as third cultured as a lot of kids out there. If I were to create a character, I would want my character to be like an actual, like all out third culture Asian kid.
Yep. Okay, why I actually want to ask this is something that I noticed especially in the older form of media in the US. In fact, I think you you mentioned it slightly. Yeah. So a lot of representation of being a Chinese in the US media tend to be in the past, especially is in the women they are portrayed as a badass Asian chicks, whereby they are portrayed as the love interest, whereas the guys are portrayed as a nerd, or somehow they think that every single one of us knows kung fu, which we don't, or we are good in maths. No, I suck in maths,
Oh,
especially.
I'm so bad at math.
Yeah, I'm quite surprised that you actually took art. I'm really surprised with that. Does your parents allow you for that?
Okay, here's the thing. I didn't exactly let my parents know. So I entered college. So in the US, you can enter college undecided. You didn't have to decide a major until whenever the deadline is, depending on the college. And for me, I didn't have to decide until the end of my second year. And I actually came in telling my parents I wanted to study international relations. And I did want to study international relations at the beginning, but then as the school year went by, I realized it's not exactly what I wanted, and I had always had a passion for art. So the thing was, what I did was I dropped international relations major, declared art major without letting my parents know. And by the time I told them, it was already like one semester in the art major. So I was like, hey, just so you know, I changed my major like a semester ago. It's going well. Didn't
Okay,
anything about it.
okay, okay. So I hope I didn't expose anything in my webcast. So if your parents are watching this, so okay, carry on.
No. My parents are in China. If this is on Facebook, they probably can't see it.
All right. Oh, that's good. Okay, so earlier what I mentioned, the image that has been put for what a Chinese character has been in the US media. I think recently they've been trying to tackle it. The Marvel tried to create they created this quite a long time actually, a character called Shang-Chi, which is played by Simo Liu, we're supposed to debut around next year, around Chinese New Year actually. But of course, with the recent epidemic, there's a lot of cancellation. There's a lot of pushbacks and everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you feel is actually a true representation is supposed to be in the media?
Oh, a true representation.
Correct.
Here's the thing. I feel like if you make a movie about something, it's never going to be true representation because those movies out there, there's always going to be a target audience. So they're always trying to portray something to feed into the target audience's view. So I think if you want to look for true representation of what a certain community looks like, maybe go on YouTube and look for those people's like vlogs or something. I think that's a lot more authentic than what mass media puts out there.
Yep. Okay. All right. Yeah, I agree with that. So recently, in my interviews, whereby I was the one interviewed, or maybe some of the contents I've created, like articles, I've tackled on racism. So the reason why I said that is because I feel that racism could be traced from in the earliest days of war. I mean, like if let's say your granddad dad or your great granddad, if their first impression in meeting maybe a Japanese or maybe a Chinese is like if your battalion is packed, then that results in unfounded hatred, and this
Mhm.
carries over to the present days.
For
So, what
sure.
do you think about this on what could be improved on this? Is because people will tend to follow the words of their elder, but the thing
Mhm.
is at a young age you can't really think much. I think you can agree with that. You are in that age. What do you think on this? What should somebody who is within your generation? Okay, I make it sound really old. What in your generation should understand with regards to advices at this?
I would say, I think critical thinking is very important these days. It's not just about what your parents or what your grandparents tell you, also what the media tells you, because these days, I think because of how easy it is to find information, people tend to only look at information that fits their perspective, whether it is on social media, whether it is like spoken words. I think it is very important to just have a critical mind to know like what is the reason behind telling you all of this and make your own judgment. And I totally can relate how you said like the grandparent generation might have, you know, like hatred toward some kind of population because of history. My I can tell you a personal story that my grandma has just like she's pretty racist toward Japanese people because of World War II. And
Yeah.
when I went to school in Singapore, I went to Singapore American School, which was pretty diverse. Like pretty much the entire population in the school was children of expats. So during one like short-term study abroad trip, my roommate was Japanese American. So after learning that I was gonna be in the same room with a Japanese, my grandma was like, "Oh, you better be careful. You know, those
Ow.
Japanese people, you never know what they're thinking. You never know what they want from you. You gotta know their motive." And I was like, "Wow, okay, I see where this is going." Yeah, I didn't really correct her because I understand where she comes from, but I also know that, you know, like don't really have to worry about it because like I was really close friends with that person. I know where I'm at. I don't want to be disrespectful, but you know, also just be understanding.
Yep. Okay, that's a really mature answer for you actually. And yeah, why I've been tackling a lot of this is because with the recent COVID epidemic, yeah.
Mhm.
So there's been a lot of unprovoked hatred, especially towards the Asians community in general. I see some attacks in the U.S., Australia, in the UK, Australia. I believe there was once in London also. I can't recall what it is. And well, there was a funny incident whereby actually a Korean was hit with an egg, and then he was told to go back to your country, which is unfair to the person.
Yeah, those instances are just I can't. I like people are just so ignorant. I think honestly this might be like a very controversial thing to say, but I think we're all racist deep down. Like we when we look at someone who looks different from us, whether it's like the skin color or the size of your nose, we tend to make assumptions based on what we know. And you know, I hate racism as much as I hate racism. I admit that sometimes I do make some assumptions about certain people as well, even though I have lived in different countries.
All right. Yeah, not to worry about that. Okay, so earlier you mentioned with regards to your grandmother's mindset in the olden days. I don't want to touch on that because I know that was during her time. And well, we this is our generation. Yeah, I can say our generation. Yeah, I can say our generation on this is because we have to evolve in a different way because we don't have that same issue as them. We have our own personal issue. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So have you ever feel that your mindset has changed from where you were from back when you were living in Shanghai as a little kid, and now you've lived abroad elsewhere. You are now an adult. How much do you think your mindset has changed? And also, what do you think has been your ultimate blessing as a TCK?
Ooh. Um, I kind of have the same answer for both questions. The biggest blessing was definitely seeing different people, especially coming from China, which is a very homogeneous society. I just wasn't really self-aware in a way that, like, we do certain things without really realizing it. Like, I had a really collectivist mindset. Sometimes I would blindly follow instructions just because, like, everybody does so anyway. um, I think by moving to a different country, I was able to know better, like, have a better understanding of what my culture is. Like, when you're in the same group, you don't really realize that until, like, you move away and now you're looking at your own culture from a different perspective. And a big thing that came out of being a third culture kid was the lesson that I shouldn't just assume I shouldn't just assume anything, basically. Not about, like, I know I previously I said, like, I still make certain assumptions about people, but, like, I consciously tell myself whenever I meet a new person, don't just assume things based on their appearances. Like,
Yeah.
for example, I am a queer person. You probably wouldn't think that looking at me, and, like, things, really small things like that, just, that came from this entire experience.
All right. Okay, so I forgot to mention this earlier. Sorry about that. For those of you who just tuned in to Global Citizens for the very first time, this is a platform where a webcast whereby I invited third culture kids primarily, since I myself am one. Along with that, I also invited global nomads, expatriates, and international speakers who need to spend considerable time abroad due to their job. Why I actually invite this personnel is because by experiencing life overseas, it actually helped to mold somebody's characteristic, mindset, perspective well, based on the certain culture that they follow on their host countries. Whereas, I mean, if you go there for a holiday, yes, you are exposed to a new culture, but the thing is that you are there as a visitor. Within a few days, you're going to be back to your own home, and then everything is back to normal. But when you live there, it changes who you are. And one of the main area is, like, for example, a lot of TCKs are so attached to their host countries that when you hear some media maybe plagiarizing them, or maybe you feel that there was an attack on them, you feel hurt about it. So this is why I actually do this, is because I also experience a lot of culture shock, a lot of stress, as because I don't really know who I am as my personal identity. And so this allows a TCK to actually hear other TCK's perspective. And well, as from what Winnie has been saying, I think she also felt the exact same thing.
Absolutely. I am not even an American citizen, and I know there's so much that the government could have done better, but if, like, a foreigner just be like, your government sucks, I'll be like, excuse me. And if anybody says, like, America doesn't have a culture, America is, like, they think they're like the top of the world. Oh, sometimes we do. But, like, if they, like, make any, like, negative comments about the US, I'll be like, excuse me, sir. Let me tell you.
Yeah.
the same thing about China and Singapore and sometimes even Japan.
Okay. Okay. All right. So let me get back to my questions. Yeah. Okay. Earlier we mentioned on social media. So the thing is that it is social media. There is a quote from Mark Zuckerberg. I think I quote this quite several times now. When actually it's not from Mark Zuckerberg, it's from Jesse Eisenberg when he played Mark Zuckerberg on the movie The Social Network. We will be living in the internet in the future. And well, right now is we can't go out. So we really have to live in the internet. This is
Yep.
how we can meet people. I mean, this is how I can do an interview with you. All right. The thing is with TCK, there has been an unfair representation in a sense. The thing is this. So TCKs do not actually just come from being a child of a diplomat. For one thing, is that several of them could be children's from those in a missionary. Maybe they are business brats, military brats, and well, when you come from maybe as a child of a diplomat, if you are come from a country that's a lot more well-to-do, you are given a lot of certain entitlement and privileges, and well, they do that to ensure their safety. And well, with social media now, when if let's say you are going to go off in a limousine, you take the photo of the limousine, you put off the high class lifestyle you have. Now, this is not how this is not how it is in real life, because there are also TCKs who do not exactly have that lifestyle. As I mentioned, if you live in like a child of somebody from the Peace Corps, you don't have that much. Also, in fact, sometimes if you can help, you can get a bread or a roof on your head. That's already considered a privilege.
Mhm.
So, Winnie, my question on this is: firstly, how do you think this can be dispelled? The Especially in terms of how monoculture, or somebody who from the outside, when we see you, oh, you live in so many countries, you must be rich. It's not true. So how do you think this can be dispelled?
Mm, First of all, like I would definitely say that I'm privileged to have seen the world. Doesn't
Yep.
matter what my financial status is, to be able to travel the world and see different people and understand different cultures, that is a privilege. I acknowledge that, and I'm very privileged. And one thing I really don't like about social media is how anonymous it is. It is very easy to attach certain stereotypes, discrimination to a group of people, but once you assign faces to that particular group of people, it is harder to say like, Kelvin, you suck because you're like from Indonesia, right? That's less likely to happen
To be
than
fair, my country causes haze to Singapore, so yeah, that's a fair suck. Okay, okay, carry on.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's in a sense when that happened and they called me suck. Yeah, that's kind of fair. Then I got really annoyed with them. I just tell them, say more of that, and I'll tell them to burn more trees. All right, never mind.
um, but like back to the question, like what I am trying to, I honestly don't know how to solve this problem like on a bigger scale, but what I can do as a person is to be as genuine as possible on social media and try to portray things that may go against certain people's stereotype. I know that stereotypes are out there for a reason, and I actually do agree that a lot of third culture kids are rich. That's how they became third culture kids in the first place. Um, but I think by being genuine, at least from my side, I can paint a different picture. I can tell them what my story is like.
All right. Okay, so yeah, I kind of agree with that. I was privileged enough at that time. I was lucky enough that my parents were well-to-do to send me to study in Singapore, which is currently, I think, is either one of the top five or first or second in terms of economy, and it's one of the four Asian tigers. So I've been really fortunate to be able to live there for the past 15 years, but there's ups, there's downs, but Singapore is always going to be my home. And even then, I cannot adapt its full identity. It's because, I'm Indonesian by birth at the first
Yeah,
place.
TCKs
So
are always foreigners.
yeah. All right. So now I actually want to tackle a little bit with regards to the current generation. Yeah. So I recently have Mr. Vivek Iyani, who is actually one of the person who inspired the creation of this show to actually come. He is a millennial expert, and he's actually a TCK. But the thing is that he is settled in Singapore for so long that he adopted it as his home directly. So the word lazy, entitled, and lack of loyalty is frequently thrown around to describe a millennial. And for yourself, not only are you a millennial, you are also a TCK. Do you feel these three words are fair to describe you? And if your answer is no, can you elaborate a bit on why it's a no?
I do think I'm lazy.
Okay, never mind. Yeah,
Here's the thing. I think there's going to be lazy, entitled. What's the other word?
no loyalty, lack of loyalty. Sorry,
Uh, is unloyal the opposite of loyal? Unloyal. Like there's
something.
gonna be that kind of people in every generation. I think this is just my personal opinion. The reason that millennials have more of that, bad rap is because of, I would say, social media and technology. Millennials are more active on social media and they are more visible. So these traits are exaggerated, but like I think millennials are doing really great things as well. A lot of millennials are hardworking. So many millennials are activists in a lot of different areas, and those things I think are looked upon as well. So I think it, you know, there are good and bad things about each generation, and I would say, just like going back to what I've said about having critical thinking skills, I think it's just important to know like why people are saying those things, what their motive is behind that, and see the generation, in different in your from your own perspective after looking at sources from different places.
Yep. Okay. So if I can add on a bit on that, yeah. So I don't feel that this label is correct. I do feel that whether, for one thing, is that in case you guys aren't aware, the era of globalization started in the 90s, which is considered to be the time whereby TCKs maybe start popping up. The reason being is that as a result of globalization, well, we are exposed to cultures of maybe from the eastern side and the western side, or maybe from other forms of entertainment. Yeah. So I think it's not lazy, entitled, or lack of loyalty. For TCK, maybe we do not like to be in a one place. It's because we are used to have the mindset that we can't be too attached to people because, well, we'll be gone by sometime next week or next month or next year. And as a result of that, we do not develop the loyalty to that is because we do not have the opportunity to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas for the lazy and entitled, the laziness, I think it's not because we don't want to work, it's because we are not motivated to work. The thing is that a lot of the mindsets in the past is to follow a certain pattern or how to do a certain procedure. And I think this is a mindset shared by a TCK and as a millennial is that we tend to feel the need to be challenged. We cannot. It's not going to
Mm-hmm.
be motivated by money, but it's more towards a purpose-driven work. That's what we want to do. Whereas for the entitled part, well, this one I can't really comment much because there are people who are fortunate enough to be born in a well-to-do environment, but there are those who are not. But the thing is that each generation are able to, in a sense, uh, do better than the previous generation. It's because, for one thing, is that our parents always want to work hard because they don't want their kids to suffer what they went through. So
Mm-hmm.
I think in it's not. I mean, I can't blame them at all, but I think this is also an example of because the previous generation work hard to give everything that they don't have, they forgot to give what they actually have.
Mm. I would say, instead of saying that our generation is lack loyalty, I would say we're flexible. I think that
Yep.
is a better way to put it.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. Okay, so I actually have two final questions for you. So the first of the two is this: do you ever experience any? People like to call it a failure. I don't like to use that word on my show. I would like to call it learning opportunity because of a cultural misunderstanding. And how do you rectify that?
Hmm. Well, I wouldn't exactly call it a failure, but In college, the first couple of years, I tried really hard to hide my Chinese identity. Not in the way that like I'm saying I'm not Chinese, blah blah blah. Like when I tell people where I'm from, I would stress more about the U.S. and Singapore parts, as opposed to saying I am from China, blah blah blah. Because I just somehow felt the need to be like more recognized by the majority, and obviously in America, the majority is still white. And I just felt like if I said I was from Jersey, if I said I was from Singapore, and since Singapore is very modernized, very
Yeah.
westernized, I just felt that I would get more recognition from that instead of saying that I am just from China. And that mindset actually stuck with me for a long time. And that was one of the major reasons that I had like major identity crisis in college as opposed to when I was in high school. I just the how did I cope with that? I think the as I met more people, I was a privileged to have gone to Lehigh for college because Lehigh University is pretty diverse in like any way possible. And I was able to meet people from different cultural backgrounds, and those people showed me that it is okay to be who you are. You know, like you don't have to hide your identity to be recognized, because in America, after all, like we all came from different places, and at one point we were all minorities. So it is okay to recognize parts that may not be the same as other people. Like it is okay to be unique. I think that
Right.
like it took me some time to figure that out, but eventually I came to where I am now.
All right. Okay, I've actually used that sometimes in the past. I've claimed to be a Filipino and from Thailand, but the I only know several words or phrases from there, but I'm not, so it's
Oh
fine.
god.
Uh,
At least I didn't try
I think
that.
the
I
I've
may
never
have
been
tried
there
to
though.
deny my Chinese past, but at least I didn't say I was from Thailand.
No, because at that time, yeah, at that time there was certain parts whereby being Indonesian was a little bit dangerous. So
Oh god.
that was due to the circumstances. That was just due to circumstances at that time. I mean, I generally am fine admitting that I'm Indonesian, but well, well, you need to survive. So yeah, that's some
Wow.
at that time. All right,
Damn.
Winnie,
Sounds fun.
this is my last question for you.
Hmm.
So I'm not gonna ask three advices. The reason being is that I think right now at a really young age, you're still trying to figure things out on your own, also, right?
For sure.
So I actually want to focus on what sorts of supports or books would be needed to you feel you could recommend for an artist, a TCK, or a combination of both of them, a TCK artist. Why I actually asked this is because I have done 44 episodes of this. You're the 44th, yeah? So majority of TCKs that I've ever interviewed do not settle in a more conventional 9 to 5 career. They become artists, they become author, they are doing something that they are maybe an entrepreneurs, they are in tech. It's something that could, when people hear, it's considered groundbreaking or revolutionary. Of course, there are some who do consider it in a sense settled because they are married, they have children, and well, they have to take care of the family. So that is, well, everybody have their own paths in life. But the thing is that this is just a pattern I tend to notice from TCK, and I think this is something that should be encouraged because I always feel that a TCK needs a creative outlet in order to, as a testament, in a sense that, well, this we have experienced this lifestyle before. So this is our proof that we are a TCK. So what would you recommend on that?
There's this book I read. It's called hold up. I have it on my Kindle. It's basically about it's a nonfiction about this high school in America for immigrant teenagers. So everybody is basically like immigrants, TCKs from other countries, and the author just basically followed like a couple of those students throughout their high school career and see how they turn out. Let me find the book. It's called The New Kids, and let me show you the title cover. The New Kids, Big Dreams and Brave Journeys at a High School for Immigrant Kids.
Oh,
I
oh,
really,
what a
really like this book because it really spoke to me about a lot of issues such as politics, racism, culture shock, adapting to a new environment, and also how to look for, because like as TCKs, like usually our parents are not TCKs, so they don't usually know what
yeah.
we are going through. So basically looking for a career for yourself. This book is just so helpful. It made me feel very validated. I read this book in high school, like in my senior year-ish, when I was about to go off to college. And I was very concerned about how people would see me in college because I was privileged enough to go to a high school with basically all TCKs. So we were all in this together and I felt really comfortable with them. So switching that to an environment where people are mostly from like the tri-state area in the US, I was a little concerned, and this book just helped me, like validated all my concerns and basically tells me that it is okay to have those concerns, but just move on because life will be okay eventually.
All right. Okay. That's actually. Is there anything else you wanna add on with it, or that's all
No,
for now?
that's pretty much it.
All right. Okay, that's the end of episode. That's actually my last question. Sorry. That's actually my final question. So, for those of you who do check out Winnie's works, I already attached her Instagram. I've also attached her webtoons page, and if you do want to support her, do support her on Patreon. There's some exclusive contents that you can get when you support her on Patreon. Yeah. So that's episode 44 of Global Citizens. So I need to do a little shout out for Ben. Ben is actually one of my past guests. He is the host of the show Ben There, who I have actually been part of his guests. So along with that, thank you so much for those who watch in for today. Please be aware that it's not that I'm not trying not to acknowledge you guys, but I can't see you guys. The thing is StreamYard doesn't allow me to see people who just tune in. You have to click a like or you have to leave a comment so that I can give you guys a little shout out. So with that, I need to thank Winnie for coming to the show. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
All right. And that's the end of Global Citizens episode 44. Do stay safe, guys. Stay healthy. We don't know how long this corona epidemic is going to last. So please be safe. Okay. And with that, that's the end. Bye bye.
Bye. Thank